Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Beacon Theater and tonight's special tribute commemorating the official designation of September 11th as a National Day of Service and Remembrance. To begin this evening, please welcome Chief Service Officer of the City of New York, Diahann Billings-Burford.
Thank you. I bring my own fan base. Good evening, and thank you so much. In his State of the City address last January, Mayor Michael R. Bloomberg pledged that New York City would lead the way in answering President Barack Obama's call for the nation to embrace a new era of service. He brought together leaders in the public, not-for-profit, philanthropic, and private sectors to develop, and I quote, a bold and ambitious plan to maximize our city's greatest asset, to the love that all of us have for this city and our willingness to put it to work. NYC Service, which I have the honor of leading, was officially founded in April. And we are a result of that plan. Our plan is our way of continuing and amplifying the spirit of service that we saw all over our great city on that fateful day 8 years ago. The goal of NYC Service is to drive volunteer activity to the issues where the city's needs are the greatest, strengthening our communities, helping our neighbors in need, education, health, emergency preparedness, and the environment. A survey conducted last March revealed that over half of the New Yorkers aged 15 and above engaged in some type of service. 1/2, that is twice the national average. New Yorkers average 35 hours of volunteer service each year. That may sound amazing, but as a lifelong New Yorker, a Brooklyn native, I can assure you it is not. You see, New York is a city where people respond when there is a clear purpose, as we did on September 11th, 2001. With acts of bravery and compassion that resonated throughout the state, throughout the country, throughout the world. With acts of bravery and compassion that help family members. We pray and we hope help family members, some of whom are with us here tonight, who lost loved ones on 9/11. Now, 8 years later, in the midst of our worst economy since the Great Depression, New Yorkers are once again being asked to reach out and provide service where service is needed most in a strategic way that is led and supported by city leadership. We are, and we will. We know what it means to come together. We know the incredible results that come from unity and compassion, from generosity and kindness, from giving and service. We have on-the-job training in this area, and we have never forgotten the people who helped other people, the difference it made and is still making this very day. Rightfully so, September 11th is now a National Day of Service and Remembrance, and New York embraces it tonight, tomorrow, and every day. Thank you. The commitment we have to service in New York City is shared by the state of New York and by our great Governor, David A. Paterson. Thanks to Governor Paterson's leadership and vision, the state of New York is one of only 2 states in the nation, California is the other, that created a cabinet-level position to oversee statewide service initiatives. Here in New York State, that very important position is held by my very good friend and a colleague and a true leader, Susie Stern. Susie, are you here? Would you stand? And now, it gives me great pleasure to introduce the governor of this great state of New York, David A. Paterson.
I would like to, in advance, welcome some of the great Americans who will appear here tonight, not the least of which is our Secretary of State, who distinguished herself so much as our United States Senator, Hillary Clinton, and also the senior senator from New York State, Charles Schumer. I would like to welcome the director of the New York State Commission on National and Community Service, Susan Stern, and also the Commission's Executive Director, Mark Walter. So we've got some Mark Walter fans here tonight. And also David Payne, who is the president. He's the president of My Good Deed. Today marks the 8th anniversary of the most deadly attack that this country has ever sustained on its own soil. And in that regard, many of us are still stunned in disbelief that there ever really was a September 11th. Just the roaring of a plane, the ringing of a siren, sometimes the clap of thunder brings back that terrible memory. The other day, someone was reading my schedule to me, and I noted that it was a beautiful day in early September. A beautiful day in early September, to me, means September 11th. So like many others, I have to get by the echoes that haunt us all about that terrible day. But it is so important that we move past the chagrin of that day, because there were other events that occurred that day that provided a silver lining on that dark day of dark cloud that hung over those events. For if we think too much about the fires and the suffering and the damage, lest we would ignore the great acts of men and women, of chief executives and entry-level employees, of liberals and conservatives who came together that day to try to save each other with great acts of heroism. Special people like 2 Port Authority employees, one named Frank DiMartini and the other named Pablo Ortiz, who went back into the buildings twice, into the fires, to save their colleagues, but didn't come out the 3rd time. That's the day that we let the terrorists know that love is stronger than death, that hope will dominate over experience, and that dreams are more important than history. That is the day that we establish forever, that the measure of history will be that all of the good acts of the many will overcome the evil acts of a few. And so, as the word volunteer is thrown around these days in a lot of different contexts and has a lot of different appellations, there were really volunteers that day. There were parents who took children home, but they weren't even their children. There were policemen and firefighters, emergency service workers, and transit authority employees that ran into burning buildings to save strangers that they never met before in their lives. There were people who, inside the Twin Towers, fought to try to save their colleagues and never came out with them. And yet, there was the greatest single rescue in the history of this country, as thousands of people were led to safety by those brave people. And yet, as we remember them, what they performed those days were what we can perform on the lower frequencies every day, and we call it volunteerism. And volunteerism is something that we take very seriously in New York. So today, as the President has commemorated this day with a National Day of Service and Remembrance, right here in New York, I have issued a proclamation for a statewide day of service and remembrance as well. And I challenge other governors to do it, but I challenge them also to match what I announced last year on September 11th at Columbia University during that service day, which is that we are elevating the director of our Commission on National and Community Service to a cabinet position in our administration, and we would like all of them to do the same. In April, Congress sponsored the Serve America Act, sponsored by Senator Edward M. Kennedy, one of the great Americans that ever waltzed the stage of service. And in that regard, it has commended us in New York State to bring more people out to serve, to render service to others, which is really the price we pay for our space on earth. And in that regard, we are trying to enlighten early education of children, healthy lifestyles for children, and also to clean up our environment and provide security to our planet. And it is in that regard that we try to emulate the great acts of those who put their lives on hold, and some of them forever, to save individuals they'd never met before. The great writer Pierre Abelard wrote in the 7th century that sometimes there are moments of crisis that create an embolic connection between who we are and who we ought to be. In the 12th century, Pope Gregory amended that by saying that these acts committed by individuals for strangers they don't even know are our way of finding that oneness with the universe. And he quoted the parable of Jesus who said to love our neighbors as we would love ourselves. But I'm hoping here in the 21st century, particularly as an addendum to that horrible act 8 years ago, that perhaps people who observe the Jewish faith and those who are Hindu and those who are Muslims and those who are Buddhists will join with Christians and learn to love our neighbors because they are ourselves. Thank you very much.